Greetings, class. This is Gary, and this is a lecture that deals with the role and responsibilities of the stage director. We've covered a lot of this material, probably all of this material in class, so this is simply here for you for your review if you're interested in listening to it and watching it. So let's go ahead and move forward. And the question that we tried to take a look at was, what does the director do? What are her or his responsibilities? And we identified a number of things, and I'll talk about each of those things separately, but the basic responsibilities of a stage director are: one, to sometimes, depending on the theater, select the show; to sometimes, depending on the theater, cast the show. And to cast the show means to make the specific selections of what people or what actors are going to play what roles. And then the last three items are always the responsibility of the director, and that is to interpret the show, to integrate the production elements, and to rehearse the cast. And we'll take a look at these things one at a time. So, when we ask what factors need to be considered when selecting a show, we took a look at some of these kinds of things. The director would want to balance the season. So if a theater company is doing 5 shows, unless it was a somewhat unusual situation, you would want 5 nicely contrasting shows, perhaps something that's a little heavier, something that's a little lighter, maybe a musical, maybe a very serious play. So usually a good season will want to do, a good season will consist of different kinds of plays, but plays that are all true to the mission of the theater. A theater exists for some particular purpose. Some theaters are very socially minded and want theater to be very thought-provoking, to take on the major issues of the day. Other theaters are dedicated to maybe musical theater or a more light-hearted theater. So whatever reason the theater exists, wherever the theater exists, you will always want to pick shows that are consistent with why you decided to get into the theater in the first place. Theater can be expensive. It can also be inexpensive, but you always want to consider, when selecting a show, do you have the money that it will take to mount the production? You always want to think about the audience. The play is done for the audience, and so who is your audience? Who is likely to attend the shows that you select? And is this a play that you think the audience will enjoy or be provoked by or be excited by? So that's always a consideration. Plays, the playwrights write plays, and playwrights are entitled to a fee when someone decides to produce their play. So for example, this spring I will be doing The Beauty Queen of Lebanon, and I had to go to an agency and request the rights to produce that play. They in turn charge the university a fee. It's about $75 a night, and so we pay this agency $75 per night for each night of the play. A professional theater with a large audience and expensive tickets, it obviously will be much more than that. If the playwright has been dead for a certain number of years, then no longer are royalties required. So if I want to do Shakespeare, I don't have to pay any royalties whatsoever. That's called a play that is in the public domain. In addition to financial resources, I have to think of other kinds of resources. Are there actors available to play the roles in this play? Are there technicians? What are the technical demands of the theater, and can we handle them? And finally, is this a good play for wherever it is that we perform theater? And so if you have a very, very large theater, is it a play that will easily fit in there? If it's a very small theater, is the play that you're thinking about doing, will that fit in there? So those are important considerations to think about when selecting a show. Okay, what are the kinds of things that we want to take a look at when making the decision regarding what actors should play what roles? And there are a number of them. And some of them are pretty obvious. You'll want to consider, is the actor sufficiently talented? Ideally, you probably want to use actors who have some experience, although first-time actors can be quite wonderful. Is the actor well suited for the character? Just because an actor is very talented doesn't mean she or he is right for every role. And it's not a case of the best actor always getting the biggest role, but rather finding appropriate actors for specific characters. We'll take a look at the cast as a whole, as an ensemble. Is this a group that's going to look good together, look appropriate together, and will they be able to work together effectively? I want to take a look at key pairings. If you're doing Romeo and Juliet, do you want to pick a Romeo and Juliet who look good together, who it's not just a case of two separate actors, it's really a case of what those two people look like together. I use the term directability much like a coach would say, is a player on a team coachable? The director would like to have a good working relationship with her or his actors, and so when I direct a show, I want to see if I think I can be effective in working with those people, and that will sometimes impact my casting decision. And I think, as I mentioned earlier with regard to general show selection, so too with casting. If it's a professional theater, can you afford the actor? Can you afford to pay the price that he or she gets for performing in the play? Moving ahead, we take a look at the interpretation of the show and what factors should be considered. And this is more abstract. This is a little harder to talk about in a way that makes sense. But as a director, you want to always think about what the play is about and how it communicates and what it is about the show that you like and you want to make sure is conveyed, with the understanding that no matter what you do, everybody in the audience is going to look at it and perceive the experience somewhat differently. But always when you direct, you want to say, what is at the core of this show? What is it that I want to emphasize in the production? Sometimes, depending on the play, the director actually will establish the time and place of the production. This particularly is with older, more classical plays. So, for example, if you're doing a Shakespeare, if you're doing Romeo and Juliet, where do you want to set the play? In what time period? In what place? And a director has a great deal of flexibility in making those choices, especially with classical plays. Production values. How elaborate is the setting going to be? The costuming. What is that? What are the technical elements going to look like, and how are they going to support what you want to accomplish with the play? And then the last term is really a tricky one in the theater, and some people just sort of cringe when they even hear it. But sometimes a director will refer to his concept or her concept of a particular play. And that can mean a lot of different things depending on who you talk about, but a concept really deals with the director's overall interpretation of the play and the overall approach toward producing the play. So it's a term that means a lot of different things, and I mention it here just so just in the event that you hear it and kind of wonder what it means, but it means a lot of different things, and it's a term that doesn't always help very much in understanding what a director does. So don't worry about it, but just know that it's a term that is often used. Okay. A director will always rehearse a cast, and that is a major responsibility and a significant investment of time. And directors do a lot of things when they rehearse. They work with actors on the interpretation and portrayal of their characters. They are involved with the composition and blocking of a show, and by composition I simply mean where the actors stand or sit at any one time on stage, and by blocking I simply refer to the movement of actors on stage. The director works with the actors on the style of the production. Is it a very formal, informal style? The director may work with the actor on the dialect on the show. If a show is set in Alabama or Mississippi or Minnesota or New York or New Jersey, all of those places have different dialects, and the director or perhaps a dialect coach might work with the actors to try and capture the flavor of that language. The director also will work, and this is particularly important, on both timing, sorry that's a typo there, the timing and the pace of the show. That tends to happen later in the rehearsal period, but it is crucial to a show. If a show is going to be effective, it has to be paced appropriately and the timing has to be good, particularly in comedy, but really with all kinds of production. And the director needs to integrate the actors with the production elements, help with the process of introducing the sounds, the lights, the costumes, the set, and the makeup into the actual rehearsal process. And those kinds of things tend to be added later in the production process. And so the director finally works to integrate those production elements, and to do that, he or she works with the designers for a unified production. And usually the director will work with a costume designer, a lighting designer, perhaps a sound designer, a set designer, if it's a musical director, perhaps a dialect coach, and a stage manager who is really responsible for much of the logistical work that happens both during rehearsals and during the show. The director will work with those people as well, so that everyone's working on the same page and kind of a unified product emerges out of rehearsal and into production. So that's it for the important work of a director, and as always, thank you very much.